everybody, it's JR, back with another episode of Three Things with JR, episode number 93, slowly creeping in on episode 100, gonna hit that here in a few weeks, a couple months, sometime this summer most likely. We'll have to figure out how to celebrate 100 episodes of Three Things with JR. Ooh, all right. What are we doing today? First off, you should know we are very excited over at my band. To Be Fair is the name of the band, and you now can see that on our Facebook page. We changed everything on our YouTube page when we came up with the new band name, To Be Fair, and we changed our Instagram, and we tried to change our Facebook page. Facebook was very uncooperative. We tried several times. Gary tried, I tried multiple times, and it just wouldn't take. It was about a month ago we were really going after it hard, and then we just kind of dropped it and figuring Facebook wasn't going to let it happen for some strange reason. Then Gary just tried it again the other day, and boom! Our Facebook page has now been changed. You can find us at To Be Fair, spelled TOBEFARE. To Be Fair. That's the name of the band, and our Facebook page finally recognizes that. So we're pretty excited. We've been rehearsing every week. We are going into the studio soon to record new music. We've got 3 songs we are super excited to record. We're going to bring in backup vocalists. We're going to be working with a new studio, and we're going to go for it. So look hopefully for some new music from the new band, which is the old band with a new name, coming soon. Very excited about that. I'm also, since I'm not currently doing anything with musical theater at this moment in time, I accepted an invitation to do some comedy. And this show, if you're listening to this, it drops on Tuesday, the 17th, and tomorrow, the 18th, Wednesday night, at the North American Sake Brewery in the Ix Art Park in downtown Charlottesville, there is a comedy showcase, and I am on it. I'll be doing comedy for the first time since, I did it like once in January, but before that, it's really been since September since I was kind of doing comedy. So I've got a few new thoughts that I've jotted down over these past 6 months or so, and I might just do some old favorites, see if standing in front of people without a script, without a song to sing, without a dance to tap is something I can do. If it's just whatever I think is funny and I share it with an audience, does it work? I don't know. I want to try it again. I'm excited. I'm actually kind of jazzed up to do it. So come on out and check it out. Comedy. I'll be back. North American Sake Brewery, Wednesday, May 18th, 8:30 p.m. Get yourself some food. They've got really good food there. Get some sake or a soda or some water or whatever you want to drink and hang out with us because it should be a good time. This week, this episode, I have been writing this episode for a while now. And I just had to put it on the back burner as things just got way too hot and heavy with the show, with Something Rotten, which I'm not talking about anymore. I'm trying to let it go. It's tough. It's tough to let it go. It's still every single day I have those songs in my head. Okay, I really need to stop. We're not talking about Something Rotten this time. It's something else. Something less rotten. Maybe not, actually. This thing I'm going to be talking about is pretty rotten. 3 things about working in radio. I've always loved the radio. Well, maybe not always. I used to love radio. Local, terrestrial radio stations used to be pretty freaking awesome. These days, there's not as many good local radio stations in the U.S., and I haven't really listened to one in a long time, at least not on purpose. Used to be a thing. It used to be the way you listened to music at work, in the car, at home. DJs were like celebrities. Radio personalities were my idols. I always wanted to work in radio. I can vividly picture riding in my mother's car, listening to Pink Floyd's Another Brick in the Wall when it was a new song. And I was so young. I was mishearing. I didn't understand what this stuff was about. When they said the dark sarcasm in the classroom, I heard the Dukes of Hazzard in the classroom. And so, yeah, I didn't know what that was, but I vividly remember singing that along with the song. Driving around with my parents, listening to the radio is a plethora of fond memories. I can just as vividly remember listening to Golden Oldies while working with my dad. The music was great, but I always loved the DJs. They had big, boomy, excited voices. They were awesome. And it never bothered me like it bothered other people when the DJ would talk up a song, like especially if they were good at it. And to be good at it, you had to have something worth saying, usually about the song you're playing. The DJ would get the song rolling, and during the opening of the song, the DJ would be finishing up, telling you some tidbit about the band or the weather or what songs were coming up next. And they would talk right up to the moment when the song really kicked in, like with a drum fill or the opening lyrics or the bass drop. I was always impressed when they could do that so well. I thought it added to the experience, at least for me. Even more than DJs, though, I loved funny talk radio. And in the DC area, we had some of the best radio shows to listen to. I've talked extensively on this show about my love of Don and Mike. They were a DC radio team for a long time, and they were my absolute favorite. I still wish they were on the air somewhere doing their thing because they were fantastic. They started off with a morning show on WAVA, then they moved to a different radio station, WJFK, where they did afternoon drive time from 2 to 7. And it was really, the whole show was just two best friends talking with people that would call into the show. They would play games. They would do impressions and bits and skits and things. And they had sound effects galore. They had little sound bites. They'd play at just the right times that you got to know really well if you listened to every single day like I did. My friend Chris and I would often come home after school and just sit in my living room, smoking cigarettes and listening to Don and Mike. Those were some wonderful afternoons. Howard Stern was in my head from when I was very young. He was on the radio in D.C. when, before he went big time in New York. One of his bits, most famous, was Fart Man. I remember listening to Fart Man in the car as my mom was driving me to Montessori school. It was so funny. I've been a lifelong Howard Stern fan. I listened to him in D.C. growing up. He was syndicated on a Richmond radio station that reached all the way to Charlottesville, so I could listen to him after I had moved out of the D.C. area, moved in with my now ex-wife, living in the Charlottesville area, and he was syndicated from New York into D.C., several other cities, and somehow syndicated into Richmond, Virginia. That is until the owners of a holier-than-thou local grocery store chain got him taken off the air in Richmond. And this is why I have never once shopped at a U-Crops grocery store. Then, of course, when he moved to Sirius Satellite Radio, which became Sirius XM, I was already a subscriber, literally to both Sirius and XM back when they were two separate companies. I mean, I was all in on Howard Stern on satellite radio, now able to literally say whatever he wanted to say and do whatever he wanted to do. And, oh, man. I listened to every minute. He's still on the air, of course, but I listen to more podcasts now than I do Howard Stern. But I will always be a fan. It's kind of like an alcoholic is always an alcoholic, even after they stop drinking. That's kind of how it is with me and Stern. And it was Don and Mike, along with Howard Stern, that really made me want to be in radio. I wanted to do a show like them. I wanted to play music, take calls live from listeners, play games, do bits, have sound effects, interview interesting people, famous or not. And I wanted to make a lot of money doing it as a big-time radio personality. So when I moved to Charlottesville in 1993, I started listening to the local radio stations. Don and Mike and Howard Stern weren't available on the radio in Charlottesville, but we did have Max and Michelle in the morning. Then it became Max and Rick. Then they started calling it the Big Greasy Breakfast. It was always Max and somebody else, Highway John, people like that. It wasn't quite the same as like a Howard Stern or a Don and Mike, but they did do some fun stuff. They took calls and played them on the air, though they usually recorded the call during a song and then played it back after the song, just to make sure nothing inappropriate was said. They did the news, the weather, local stuff. They played a lot of songs. They had funny sounds for when they were doing a bit. It was good. Not Don and Mike good, but good enough. It was super safe. Nothing that would get the attention of the FCC. I pictured Max and Michelle as big celebrity fish in the small pond that was Charlottesville. I assumed they made good money. After all, they were the main reason to listen to 3WV, at least in my opinion. After a few years in Charlottesville, I decided to go for it. I had heard of interns on shows like Don and Mike, and I figured that was the best way into radio. I went to our local community college to see what kind of broadcasting or communications classes they had. They didn't have any. Nothing related to radio at all. No communications degrees, nothing like that. But they told me they did an internship with local radio stations. I just had to enroll, take at least a class, and they could connect me with 3WV as an intern. I was in. I took the entrance exam, found out that despite taking algebra twice in high school, I still didn't know math well enough to take college-level courses. So I took algebra again, which had to be completed pass-fail before I could take other classes. But that was all I needed to do to qualify for a radio internship. So yeah, I finally passed algebra, and I got to start working with the fine folks at 3WV. And here's 3 things about working in a local radio station in the 1990s. Thing number 1. There's no money in local radio unless you own local radio. There's especially no money for college interns, and as an intern, my job was to go help out the DJs when they were out to on remote things like local events, putting on some kind of show. For example, 3WV did a Monday night football party show at a restaurant and bar near UVA. It was called the Greenskeeper. No longer there now. It's been many things ever since then. It was even a Sheetz convenience store for a little while, but it is nothing at the moment. The DJs like Deb Gilbert and Max in the Morning, things like that, they would play games with the crowd at the Greenskeeper while Monday Night Football was going on. They gave stuff away. We watched the game. We talked about it. We played games. It was fun. Even though I was just setting up and tearing down the gear, they actually started to talk to me on the air, and I became known as Adam the Intern. I did well enough that when my one community college Algebra for Dummies class was over, 3WV was ready to hire me, very part-time. So I was no longer an intern. I was the guy pressing play on pre-recorded syndicated shows like Flashback with Bill St. James for 2 hours on Sunday nights. I wasn't allowed to talk on the air, just run the board, play the commercials and the show, and go home. And for this, I was paid $5 an hour. That's $10 every week. That made sense to me, that I wouldn't be earning much money as a part-time, very part-time board op. But to my astonishment, Max in the Morning, despite being a bit of a Charlottesville celebrity, was making the kind of money public school teachers made. Not much. Certainly not Don and Mike or Howard Stern money. This was my first clue that small-town radio is not the same at all as big city radio. There's just less money available for the talent, the people, the performers whose job it was to entertain, inform, and play music. It's a noble profession, but a really cheap one. After a while, I did indeed get to talk on the radio. In fact, I became the Saturday night guy. I did a 5-hour show from 7 to 11 on Saturday nights. In addition to playing music, I was now going to have to come up with things to say between songs. The weather, news, PSAs, and fun stuff like the list from the paper showing what live music was going on in Charlottesville and where. I actually had a DJ job, and I loved it. Things number 2 and 3 coming at you right after the break.
Nothing I can say. Change your mind and stay.
Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us. Thing number 2 about working in local radio in the 1990s. Don't get too creative. As I was working these shifts, I had downtime while songs were playing, so I would explore. And I found the rack of sound effects carts that Max in the Morning used to spice up his morning radio show. I quickly started to work them into my show without really ever even asking for permission. After a few weeks, I was asked to stop doing that. Those sound effects belonged to the morning show and shouldn't be used at other times of day. This was some sort of rule that made sense to executives but did not make sense to me. I mean, why didn't someone listening to the radio in the evening also deserve to be entertained? Anyway, I became very good at my job. I had people that would call in every Saturday night to talk to me, to request songs. I had fun playing the music, talking up the songs, living the radio dream. I thought maybe the radio station could use a new show. Saturday nights and Sunday nights seemed to be a good place for them to try out shows. They had shows about an hour long each, things like Wet Paint with Gordon Hahn, a show featuring newly released songs. There was a show all about local artists. My idea was to do an hour-long show showcasing songs as they were used in movies. I would take movie clips from movies and play them along with songs identified with those movies. Pulp Fiction was a perfect example of a movie with a ton of quotable lines and great songs, a wonderful soundtrack. Each show could be a theme focused on a single movie, like Pulp Fiction, or a mix of clips and songs from a bunch of different movies that all had something in common, like a particular actor or a band or a movie genre. Great songs from action movies, things like that. I pitched this idea to Tom Bass, our DP, Director of Programming, and he told me he'd think about it, and I continued to sell him on the idea because I knew he wasn't quite sold yet. I even went as far as to make a demo of the show, and it was probably a horrible demo. I had to record all the audio from the movie clips that I wanted the old-fashioned way, from VHS tapes onto 8-track carts in one of the production studios at the radio station. The same kind of, that also meant, by the way, that I needed to go to the video store and rent movies to do this, to produce the demo, to sell them on the idea of this show that I was very passionate about. And I would record these little sound bits from the movies, funny quotes from movies that you've heard 1,000 times. I would record them onto the same kind of carts they used to play the Max in the Morning sound effects, little 8-track carts. That's what all the commercials were on. That's what all the PSAs were on, all of the little sound effects, little 8-track carts. So then I went in and did an hour-long demo of the show, of what I thought the show could be. That's when I realized just how much work this was going to be to pull off my vision. But I didn't tell Tom that. I wasn't deterred by this at all. I just plowed ahead. In the end, he decided it was not going to appeal to enough people, and that the answer was no, not happening. He really didn't think there was enough to do. Movie music, which was what I had sort of temporarily been calling it, was not going to be a thing. I knew he was wrong, and I was proven right a few years later when XM satellite radio launched with an entire channel dedicated to doing exactly what my show was going to be. Except they were doing it like all day long, every single day. Even I thought that was a bit too much, and they ended up with a lot of filler, like they were playing like the orchestral music from movies, trying to create the atmosphere of the movie. I really just wanted to celebrate the fun quotes from movies that we could play on the radio and then play the songs that were identified with those movies. I think it would have worked much better as a short, like a weekly show type of thing. But no, it would be so much easier to do this kind of show now, like as a podcast. Certainly easier in a technical way, like to get the audio from the movies and pick the songs and do the show. That would take so much less work now. Every movie is available right here on my computer, the same one I'm using to record audio right now. All the movies are there. I could record the movie clips from these movies in a matter of minutes, and I wouldn't even have to go rent the movies. They're just there. So easy. All the songs are right there. They're right here on my computer too. Right at my finger. I mean, I could make a demo of this show in like 3 hours. Done. I could have it. One show, demo, done. And I'll bet if Tom Bass heard that now, he would be, he'd have thunk twice. But then there's the legal side of things. I'd have to, I don't even know. Like, I'd have to research what it would take to do a show like that now. But I'm guessing there's a lot of red tape I'd have to wade through, probably more than I'd want to deal with, to get the permissions and the rights to play clips from movies and songs. Like, I don't even know how that works. Do I have to pay them? Do they pay me? Do I need permission? I think there's a lot more to it than that when you make a podcast, which is why I don't usually feature lots of songs by artists I don't have permission to play their music. That's why my theme song is from my band, because I know Gary, and he said, yes, we can use it. So movie music will have to be done by someone with more patience than me for the red tape bullshit side of things. But I think it'd be a cool podcast. I have not searched. For all I know, this already is a podcast. I don't know, but there you go. The difference between my stint and radio and versus like podcast is that I'm the only limit on my creativity. I don't have to check with Tom Bass to see if an idea is good. If I want to do a whole show about a job I had 27 years ago, I can do that. Thing number 3, real estate talk with Ray Cadell. Sunday mornings, 8 a.m., 3WV had a talk show on, hosted by Ray Cadell. For those that don't know, he's a local real estate agent here in Charlottesville. Very connected sort of guy. He knows everybody, and everybody knows him. He's also a top-notch trumpet player and the band leader for a very successful wedding band named Big Ray and the Cool Cats. If you want to know more about Ray Cadell, check out episode number 61. I interviewed him on this show just last year. You'll learn quite a bit about Ray. He's quite the cool cat. Episode 61. Go find it. Ray's 8 a.m. Sunday morning show needed a new producer. Their longtime producer was leaving the show to go hike the Appalachian Trail, and Tom Bass thought I would be a good replacement. He took Ray and me to lunch, we hit it off, and I took over as the producer of a talk show. Sure, I was the Saturday night DJ known as Adam Zant, working till 11 o'clock at night, but there was no reason I couldn't be up bright and early to produce a talk show at 8 o'clock the very next morning. Every Saturday night, every Sunday morning. Many weekends I slept at the studio to make sure I didn't oversleep, miss an alarm, and not get there for Ray's show. Plus, it saved a lot of driving time. I got more sleep as a result. My job, hosting or producing Ray Cadell, Real Estate Talk with Ray Cadell, had 2 major components. First and foremost, I had to get the guests for the show. Now, this usually wasn't all that hard, as Ray knows everybody, and he would often just bring in his friends and colleagues to chat for an hour and take calls. So all I had to do was nothing to get those guests. He would just tell me, I've got guests for this one and that one and next week and all that. But sometimes he didn't have anybody lined up, and I had to get creative and find Ray guests. Usually the guests I found were not the same type of people that Ray would bring in. I usually found people that took Ray out of his comfort zone a little bit. My favorite guest came from a newspaper article I had read about how many bars were using 7-Eleven Slurpee machines to make fun adult mixed drinks, alcoholic Slurpees. Now, they couldn't call them Slurpees at that company, but everybody knew it was the Slurpee machine now being used in bars and restaurants to make fun drinks. And the article featured the guy at the company that was responsible for this, for taking these Slurpee machines, the same ones that they use at 7-Eleven, and putting them in bars. I reached out to that guy, and yeah, he was totally down to come in early on a Sunday to talk with Ray. He even voluntarily brought in some spiked Slurpees for Ray to try on the air. That show got slightly sloppier than it should have, because Ray drank all of the spiked Slurpees that the guy brought in, which wasn't a lot. I mean, he was not drunk or anything, but he was maybe just a little looser than normal. And it was a lot of fun, for sure. My other job was to run the board during the show. So set up the mics, play the theme song, take the calls from the listeners, patch them into the studio, play the commercials, basically just run the entire show so that all Ray had to do was talk to the guests and the callers. And I loved this. It was like multitasking at its finest. And then I got my big break. Ray was going to take a week off. He offered me the opportunity to do the show myself. I immediately said yes. This is what I do when given an opportunity. I say yes. Generally speaking, it has served me well. Now, I had no idea how hard it was to talk on the air live for an hour. I tackled this with everything I had. I found out about a local zoo that was opening up outside of Charlottesville, so I took my family to the zoo, talked to the owners, got the red carpet treatment, and lined them up as guests on the show. My idea was to interview them, the people running this new zoo, for 20 to 30 minutes, then also bring in my wife and kid, Angela and Chester, into the studio to talk with me about their experience at the zoo. We went as a family, why not? And then we would also take calls from anybody that had questions about this zoo. About 10 minutes into the show, I felt like I was already running out of things to ask, things to say, experiences to talk about. I hadn't yet learned the art of embellishment and looking for the little nuggets and blowing them way out of proportion just to fill the time. I immediately developed a lot of respect for Don and Mike and Howard Stern and every other radio talk personality I had already idolized. This was not easy. We made it work. It wasn't a total shit show, but it was not something I would do again anytime soon. I thought I had sufficiently prepared for the show, but I wasn't even close. I was probably much harder on myself than anyone else was. It was seen as a success, as in I didn't get any feedback from Tom Bass at all. Anybody else at the radio station, for that matter. Ray, of course, talked to me about it when he returned, and he laughed and chuckled when I told him how hard it was and how much more I respected him, but I was kind of it. I'll take that. That's a win in radio. In local radio, where they don't really value the on-air talent, the people that are so passionate about making local radio sound awesome, they don't value that at all. They don't pay these people hardly anything, and they don't let you take initiative and creativity and all that. It's just stifling. And so to just simply not get any negative feedback on my 1 hour talk show was great. I took that as a win. My time at the radio station was not for nothing, despite it not being everything I had dreamed it would be. I met people there I still work with and will always consider friends. Deb Gilbert was the midday DJ when I started at 3WV, but as I was started, she was leaving to go work for some telemarketing company called Crutchfield. Pfft, I couldn't believe it. Giving up radio to try to sell things over the phone? No way. Mark Connor was the Saturday afternoon guy when I was doing Saturday nights, so we got to know each other pretty well as he would hand off the reins to me each Saturday at 7 p.m. And once he got to know me and realized that I was a pretty good dude, he told me about Crutchfield. It was his day job. Deb Gilbert was happy there. Maybe I should apply. In the end, I did. And Tom Bass and Ray Cadell and Mark Connor all gave me rave reviews when HR called them for references, and I got the job. That was almost exactly 26 years ago, June 3rd, 1996. I'm still at Crutchfield, and I refuse to ever listen to 3WV again. They got bought by a bigger radio company, so they were like less local than before. But they did their best to be one of the top local radio stations still. A few years ago, though, they canned Max in the Morning, the best morning DJ in Charlottesville for longer than I've lived in Charlottesville. He came back from vacation one day, boom, no more Big Greasy Breakfast. We're going a different direction. You're done. I have no idea what they do in the mornings on 3WV anymore, or in the afternoon, or who their Saturday night DJ is, or what kind of talk shows they have in the early morning and late evening hours on Sundays, because local radio sucks now.
People who love should always love people. People who care put their souls on the line. People of faith have something to live
I also volunteered for a brief stint at UVA's radio station, WTJU. I got stuck with the Monday morning, 3 to 6 a.m. time slot, but that's a story for a different show. Thanks for listening. See you next week.
Everybody say people who love should always love people. People who care, put their souls on the line. People of faith have something to live for. But people who hate are just wasting their lives.